Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz, Shauketaly.
And top of the morning to you. This is Newsline Live. We're broadcasting from the Newsfirst studios in Dorset Street in Colombo. And our guest this morning is Member of Parliament, and we have a very important question for him, which we shall do as soon as we tell you who the guest is. It's Mr. Iran Wickramaratne. Very good morning to you, Mr. Wickramaratne.
Good morning.
Morning. Right, first question then. Which one should I take? Okay, we'll take this one. The police, the Special Task Force, they seem to be everywhere. They're on standby. Until I read the newspapers, and then it all came to me, because there is some Gazette notification, isn't there, that the President has placed the armed forces on alert, or whatever it is, on standby to maintain law. There it goes. Armed forces on standby for public order. And I saw all the way from Mount Lavinia to along Marine Drive as well. So they're there. They're kind of ready. They're on their bikes. And because it was unusual, that's why it caught my eye. Good idea? Bad idea?
Well, I don't know, because I don't know what the security assessment is. Post-election, there has been violence reported where people have been attacked, have suffered, and so forth. And I must say, during the election, there was very little violence, and it was conducted in a very peaceful manner. But post-election, and I think this kind of thing should be reined in very quickly. Usually you use the police because it's for law enforcement, and that's how it should be. The police should be there. So I don't know what the other reasons are for the armed forces being on alert.
We'll see. Good. Well, there must be a method in everything. Now then, the real question that we'd like to ask you, because for good governance, you need a robust opposition, don't you?
You do.
We do. We agreed on that. In that case, Iran Wickramaratne, what is going on in your party?
Like after every election, in any party, in any country, the people who win the election go on to engage themselves in the issues of governance. The people who lose an election generally go into reviewing and evaluating why they have lost, what they did wrong, and so forth. So we had several issues. One issue was we had the issue of incumbency, because if you are the government or part of the government, then naturally whether you have met people's expectations or not weighs on you. And so that weighed on us, right? And it is unfortunate because our candidate, Mr. Sajid Premadasa, was not directly responsible for most of the issues of the incumbency. Obviously, when you're in cabinet, you have collective responsibility, but not necessarily direct responsibility. When people ask questions like, those who have plundered the country, why weren't they brought to justice? Or why was the justice process moving so slowly?
That's all collective responsibility.
Lots of it is collective responsibility, not direct responsibility. But he, as a candidate, obviously has the disadvantage of having to face up to that. The other thing that came up was clearly a fear psychosis that was built up during the election. And that's also a tactic that has been used in other countries of the world as well, particularly in developing countries.
What do you mean by fear psychosis?
You create a crisis, basically, which is a perceived crisis, which is not a real crisis. You create a thing that the country is under great threat, the country will be divided. This divisional story, I've heard it almost all my life, you see. And we all know that the country is never in that sense physically divided. It's actually uniting people and uniting communities, uniting hearts of people, which is really the challenge. But always it's depicted like a physical division of the country. It used to be the LTT dividing the country, and this time it transferred into like international agreements. I'm going to divide this country into two. So you create a crisis. It's psychological warfare. And then once you create that crisis, then you hoist your leader as the one who could actually save you from the crisis.
Right.
And this is what really happened in this election. And therefore you create this thing that you need a strong leader, somebody who will really create law and order, will unite the country, keep it together. But actually what happened in this election is it divided this country, very unfortunately. Not physically, it divided it in terms of the communities of this country, which is very, very unfortunate. After the end of the war, right, after the end of the military conflict, the whole challenge the country had was actually to unite its communities, build a Sri Lankan identity, and to move forward. But actually, after this election, it has left us worse. So the new president, while I wish him well, I wish him a lot of insight and wisdom in actually rising above all of this and trying to see how he could bring the people of this country together. Because economic and social development fundamentally rests on the fact that there is really reconciliation and harmony and everybody is working together.
You know, Mr. Hunt, I asked you what's going on in your party, and you've told me what's going on in the country. So I'm going to ask you again, what's going on in your party? Where's the democracy in your party? Why is this consternation about that?
So why I talked about the country is because clearly when you're looking at what needs to be done, reviewing the result, right, and understanding the complexity of it, then you have to try to figure out how are we going to resolve it.
And just before you answer that, if you forgive me, on Newsline Live, we encourage you to send us your questions by SMS. The number is 0772 300 305. 0772 300 305, and we are in conversation with Mr. Eran Wickramaratne. Send us your questions by SMS in, please. Carry on, please.
So you understand what really happens in society and in the country, and then you're reflecting on that and seeing how do you correct yourself, how do you respond to that. So one of the first things that we have done is that the moment the election result came in, I myself sent in my resignation immediately, though I didn't go public with it. Other ministers resigned, and then the Prime Minister subsequently resigned, and that means the whole
Why did you all resign?
cabinet.
Because after all, this is only a presidential poll. No, it's the parliament.
There are many ways to look at this. We were a minority government anyway, and we carried on like that in Parliament and carried quite successfully. And then you have a new president with a new mandate coming in, and the thinking was that maybe he should be given an opportunity to form his own government, because he can invite anybody in Parliament whom he thinks has a majority to form a government. So that was the thinking behind it. So the Prime Minister then resigns, the cabinet falls, and then a new Prime Minister is now named. And I'm expecting maybe today, later today, announcement that when Parliament will convene, so that the President could make his policy statement in Parliament of what he's going to do over the next several months. So I think the next steps are, like the leader of the opposition is the next step actually in this process, where the Speaker will make an announcement as to who the leader of the opposition will be.
I've got some questions coming in already. One of them says here, any party in any country, the leader will step down after defeat. Well, in most democracies, I believe.
Yes, I think in most developed democracies, that principle is upheld. In most developed democracies, that people do take responsibility and they resign, they allow for new people to come, new leadership and so forth. But unfortunately, I'm not referring to any particular individual. This is not a tradition in Asia, it's not a tradition in our country that people have held on to power. But I think there is a certain hope in the situation now that there will be changes. Because, as I said, the leader of the opposition will be one thing that the Speaker is considering, and the other matter will be the United National Party's leadership changes themselves. Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe has already indicated, right, that he is going to step down and hand over to a new leadership. He has no intention of leading the party into the next election, and he has stated that, and it has been publicly reported.
So why is he trying to sit as the leader of the opposition?
I think that traditionally what happens is the moment there is a change of government, the speaker calls upon the largest party at the last election to basically name an opposition candidate, and the secretary of that party normally sends a letter immediately naming its leader as the opposition candidate. And that's what has happened on the first occasion here. But also the speaker has entertained a letter with parliamentarians from the group.
Did you all have a discussion within the parliamentary group?
No, there hasn't still been
so then how can Akila Viraj write as a Secretary General to the Speaker?
Yeah, so there hasn't been a discussion in the group, right? But
so then on what basis does he write to the Speaker?
Yeah, he has, I think he has written on the basis that he's General Secretary of the group.
He can't act solo, that's not democracy.
Yeah, yeah. So he, as I said, he has, I can only presume here, he has written as a General Secretary, naming the leader of the party as a leader of the opposition. That's what has actually happened. And then, of course, MPs have also expressed their views post the presidential election. I think there is a huge cry in the country that Sajith Premadasa, the presidential candidate, should take a leadership position. In fact, it's almost unheard of that I'm told that at least 2 deaths have been reported since Sajith Premadasa's defeat, where people have ended their lives.
Because they felt so badly.
I guess they felt so badly, they were depressed. Now this phenomena hasn't been seen in Sri Lanka previously, and it's something not to be encouraged. Because we need to find ways of resolving our issues without people being pushed to extremes in this kind of way.
Now, let me just take another question, slightly different. Don't you think, this is a question from one of our viewers, don't you think that your leader and his cohorts scuppered Sajith Premadasa by bringing up the MCC agreement in the last minute and answering a journalist who most probably was planted, asking the question, would he be the Prime Minister in the event that Premadasa wins? What is the answer to that?
I think you are really asking me questions of the intentions of people, when they took certain actions, whether their intentions to actually scuttle the Premadasa victory or not. I'm unable to actually say what the intentions are, because I think that would be improper.
What about the optics? The optics.
Yeah. So
if it was you, Maratna, would you, with after so long in Parliament, so much of expertise in the political arena, from a PR point of view, you don't go and start a fire which you can't put out and which is threatening to engulf you?
Yes, so it depends on the context of the Prime Minister's comments, particularly of continuing as Prime Minister. And I think in a constitutional sense, what he said was correct, that the existing government continues and the Prime Minister continues. And then it's taken by the media and it's projected in different ways. But Sajith Premadasa made it very clear subsequently that he's looking for a new journey, new path, new people, new faces, and even he'll go to the extent of even naming a new Prime Minister and a cabinet which will include experience as well as new people.
Would you back him?
On the MC, who would I back?
Would you back Mr. Premadasa?
Yes, of course, because it's something like this. I don't just look at personalities only.
Yeah.
I looked at, what are people actually telling us in the country? What is our UNP base telling us? What are we hearing from the Balamandalias, as we travel the country? and there is a big demand for Mr. Premadasa, and there's a big demand for Mr. Premadasa to take leadership position even now, because people want a change, you know, people want a change, and therefore I think that the party is moving in that direction, and I think we are going to see some changes very quickly.
Are you amongst the 47 people who signed the document asking for Sajid Premadasa as the leader of the opposition?
Yes, I am. I signed that, certainly signed that letter, and many have signed it. It's not 47, the number has since grown. Right, number has grown. And the vast majority,
over 55?
It is vast majority of people want basically a change, and I think that that is being seriously looked at by the leader in the party and everybody who is in politics.
Now then, your party's former Secretary General, Tisat Naika, says that, well, he blames Akhila Viraj.
Yeah, I think we should...
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Newsline Live. We are discussing the United National Party. Carry on.
Yeah, when you lose, you know, it's natural, everybody wants to blame each other, and when you win, everybody wants to say you won because of that.
But Iran,
yeah,
40 plus years.
Yes.
25 years, and I think today is the 13th day.
Yeah.
25 years and 13 days as leader of the United National Party, and God knows how many electoral defeats, at least for the 30. You imagine that you know what to do.
Yes.
Where is this? Where is the Westminster-style politics and all that business that one is so used to hearing Mr. Wickremesinghe talk about?
Yeah, so as I have always said, right, in Sri Lanka, democracy has been limited to actually going to the polls and voting, and we need to increase internal democracy. So the changes in the UNP we are expecting is not only a change of faces. We actually, most political parties, including the UNP's constitution, is a dictatorial constitution. This is nothing new. I've been saying this for the last 2 years everywhere. And we need to see those changes even in the constitution. I think Sri Lankan politics focuses a lot on personalities. We should look at personalities and we should look at processes. And in this change, in the United National Party, we are looking also for process changes so that even when Mr. Premadasa takes over, he's...
Oh, so you, from what you just said, he will take over?
Of course, certainly. I think the people in this country have a hope. I want to thank all those who have voted for Mr. Sajid Premadasa. 5.5 million voters have cast their votes for them, and we are very thankful. I want to assure you that you will not be let down. Mr. Premadasa is very grateful for your vote, and he will take the leadership position, right, because he has a moral obligation to take the leadership position and basically not only to lead the United National Party, but also to lead others who are outside our party, who have supported his cause, his vision. And I think that is inevitable that we go in that direction. But my wider point was that we need to correct the system as well. And the system correction is, right, democratizing the internal workings of the party through the constitution. And I think that will be an example for other parties to do it as well. Because as we know, other people have voted in this country, right, basically for a family politics. And I think as the education levels go up, the younger generation comes, we have to create a society which is more equal and more equal opportunities for everybody actually coming in.
Indeed. Perhaps this is, I don't know, because people don't tell me their ages, nor do I want to know, but this message might be from a young person. There is a crying need for RW to go. Why is the UNP so helpless to do the obvious, even for its own survival?
Yeah, I think that what the only way I can explain that is, right, that there is a constitution, and this constitution right, doesn't have provisions for a removal of a leader, and therefore it depends on a lot of discussion and how you actually go about it. And that discussion is happening. That discussion is happening. Everybody recognizes that there is a need for change, right? And change and so forth. And I think the lesson we are learning from this is that we need to democratize the constitution so that this kind of situation doesn't arise in the future. So therefore, I'm very hopeful that sense is prevailing. Discussions are going on, and we will have an answer, because we have to get ready to face the next general election, which will most probably be at the end of April, and therefore we will go into January 1st with a revamped party, with new leadership, and basically reorganizing ourselves countrywide. The country needs a strong opposition. That is very clear.
Absolutely.
Particularly from some of the initial things that we have seen. And if you take the newspaper today and see some of the headlines, you know, that one investigator, Mr. Nishanta Silva, has fled the country. And
he's fled the country, gone with his family to Switzerland.
That's right. And people are asking, why has he need to flee the country?
Maybe he likes the fresh air in Switzerland better than in Sri Lanka.
I would not make it light in the sense of maybe they felt a certain threat to their lives and they had to leave. I hope that threat is not a real threat, because I remember after the 2015 election, Mr. Basil Rajapaksa himself fled the country and went overseas. And then, of course, he returned because he realized that there was no real threat, because we created a...
At the time, he said that he'd gone for a long outstanding medical appointment.
Okay, so he may have said that, but certainly everybody who knows that, you know, he felt that probably he would. But it's subsequently proven that we created an environment of freedom where everybody felt secure, and not a single person was killed, not a single person was hurt, not a single person disappeared in the 4.5 years that we had responsibility for government.
I was speaking, Aaron, to some people who were questioned by these people who've either been transferred and or now gone abroad. And one of them told me, after being granted bail, that, you know, he was questioned in piecemeal. Like, one of them was, what's your name, what's your rank? Then it went on for another week, and he came back, and then he asked him a little bit more. And it went on for several weeks. And eventually, it was like said to him, this is only a claim, right? Because he said this to me off the record. And he said, oh, you know, if you pin the blame on Gotabaya Rajapaksa, you'll be fine. Therefore, he spent several weeks in remand before eventually making bail. So that's one allegation on one side, and then we have this other from the other side. So it does seem that our system has been ever so, let's call a spade, corrupt, for want of a better word. And it is that system that everybody, including us and you, and everyone else who wants to be playing democracy, is trying to encourage, isn't it?
I mean, if there is an allegation like that, certainly we won't condone with it, and that's something to do with the operating system within the investigative process. But I think two wrongs will not make a right. We need to basically correct it. Now, if you take Mr. Shani Abesekara, the CID director, he has been transferred immediately as an assistant to a DIG in a province, right? And now he has been involved, if you take Mr. Abesekara, has been involved in the Lasantha Wickramatunge murder investigation. In the Keith Noya abduction, he has been involved. In the Upali Tennakon case, he has been involved. That's a former Rivera editor. Then in the he has also been involved in Pragit Eknaligoda's disappearance and so forth. And then when you have the top investigative officer who's been involved in this, two of these cases have been completed. The investigations have been sent to the Attorney General's Department. The Attorney General's Department has filed indictments, right? And when you transfer a person like this, right, apart from ongoing investigations which gets hindered, also the judicial processes will be affected. So if the government really has the intention of actually correcting what went wrong in the past, I think they need to do it in a way that the public perceive it as non-political. So when transfers like this are done, right, you're really concerned about it. And then you even raise a higher concern because the police commission, right, needs to be involved in this, and whether the police commission in 24 hours has made a decision that this is in order raises even more questions.
One of the papers said that it was at the request of the acting IGP.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying that then it raises more questions, because if you remember some time ago, I think the executive made a transfer of Mr. Nishanta Silva himself, and the police commission did not agree with it and did not approve it, and the transfer had to be basically redone, right, because of that. So the commission certainly has a big role in this.
Yeah.
So if things have been done which were incorrect in the past, they certainly need to be corrected. Right, but two wrongs will not make a right, and therefore they shall be done in a proper manner. And investigative officers, right, should feel free. They should be able to operate within the system, and they should be protected.
Sorry, I thought we finished this part. Well, I'll just read it out anyway. A party which cannot decide whether the position of opposition leader should be given to the person who received 5.5 million votes at the presidential election, or the person who has lost 30 elections. Does that wrap up somebody's opinion of the United National Party?
No, I think people are being too harsh on the United National Party, because if you see the party and the members of parliament have acted swiftly and responsibly in actually making their views known.
Irresponsibly, perhaps, in the case of Akila.
Yeah, but
written that letter without consultation.
Yeah, so majority have acted responsibility. They have brought it to the notice of the Speaker, and he has a lot to consider. As you know, the leader of the opposition position is not defined in the Constitution. It's not defined in the standing orders. It's done by tradition, and the Speaker makes a judgment. So the Speaker will make the judgment based on tradition. The Speaker will make the judgment based on precedent conditions that have existed in the past.
Will this be made by this Speaker, or are we going to wait for Mr. Vasudeva Nanayakkara to be appointed?
Yeah, I'm talking about this Speaker because we don't know who else will be Speaker, and I think that whoever is Speaker, that this needs to be made by looking at tradition, but also looking at precedent conditions. This principle has been established in the past, that the majority view of the opposition party members are considered, because there was a situation like this in the past where Mrs. Bandaranaike, when she was not able to act as leader of the opposition, nominated, I think it was Mr. C.B. Ratnayaka, and then in that situation the SLFP members wrote to the Speaker saying that the majority view is that Mr. Andhra Bandaranaike should be the leader of the opposition. And in that situation, the Speaker, after careful consideration, informed Parliament about it and said, I'm recognizing Mr. Andhra Bandaranaike as the leader of the opposition. There has also been another situation going years back in the 1950s, where, as you know, the LSSP was the big opposition party before the SLFP was formed and became big, and then SWRD Bandaranaike walked into the opposition. NM Pereira, the minister, had put himself as leader of the opposition, and then SWRD Bandaranaike put himself also in competition, and then a vote was taken, and in that vote SWRD Bandaranaike became the leader of the opposition. So the principle of representing the majority view has been established as in the past, and I'm sure that the Speaker, after studying the subject very closely, I'm confident we'll make the right decision.
I'll take this last question, shall I? Post-election violence in a Buddhist majority country is not on. Can the Mahasangha not address this self-destructive, repetitive and barbaric problem in a positive way? Can we not appeal to them to solve this?
Yes, I think that it's a fair question because I think when we look at the ills of society, there's too much focus on the politicians. Often people think that politicians are responsible for everything that goes on in society. And there's an overestimation of politicians and sometimes giving politicians too much prominence in that sense. I think that there is a need for every part of society, politicians on one hand and government on the other hand, the private sector, the non-governmental sector, and basically religious leaders to play their role. And I think, unfortunately, we don't see that these roles are being played in the way that they should be played. And sometimes there's a mix as well. So there are different views on this. I think that separation basically of state and religion may be the better way for Sri Lanka to go, and certainly all religious leaders, whether it is Buddhist, whether it is Hindu, Islamic or Christian, should certainly play a role. And I want to commend the Cardinal and the bishops of the Catholic Church, particularly in the post-Easter bombings, for the role they played, which actually calmed society, and clearly a message was given that this is unacceptable, everybody has suffered in this, but hatred cannot be basically answered by hatred. So I think religious leaders have a big role to play in societal transformation.
And so would the leader of the opposition play an equal and dynamic role in the shaping of our country's democratic fortunes?
Yes, I think the moment we know the announcement is made, and the leader of the opposition, Mr. Sajith Premadas, of course, clearly will play a very dynamic role. We as the opposition in government will support this government in all its progressive measures, and we will certainly stand strong in opposing the government if it acts outside the constitution or the legal framework and the democratic framework of the country.
Well said. In the meantime, Aaron Wickramaratne, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that's the way it was on Newsline Live today. Take care. Have a great week ahead. We'll have exciting guests for you. And, of course, once in a way, you can tune into that little thing called the radio and listen to the Talk of the Town on Yes FM. And it's also available online. So there we are. That's the way it was, Newsline Live. Take care. Have a great day ahead. And, of course, God bless.